Welcome to the Jaybe show on Revolutionary Blackout Network. I am your host, James Fauntleroy. So good to see all of you here on this Sunday afternoon. Daylight savings time has ended. Some of y'all had to wake up a little bit earlier than you wanted to, but it's good to see you here. This is officially my first stream on RBN since being back from the hospital. And so I just want to thank all of you guys for all the love and all the support, well wishes that you guys have given me over the last 3 weeks or so. It's been a lot. It's been a huge journey. If you guys would like to know exactly what happened, that's actually on my channel. If you guys want to give that a look, my channel is also linked in the description down below. So if you guys want to get that, take a look, please go ahead and do that as well. But while we're at it, we're going to just do one little thing, just one itsy-bitsy little thing. If you can, like this video so then we can actually get out to more people, to get the message out to more people. See, the message matters more than anything else. And what the message is that we will be the ones that save us, not these politicians, not these billionaires. It is going to be us. And we have to know how the sausage is made so that we know how disgusting the sausage is, right? But in doing so, we also have to make alternatives so that we won't have to partake of that disgusting food. So nothing against sausages though, because you know I can go for some maple sausage, you know what I'm saying, with some pancakes. Anyways, but that's really the crux of what we're trying to do now. Is to inform you to know exactly what's going on so that we can further educate ourselves together so that we can actually circumvent the system and create something that is worker-centric, that's people-centric. So thank you very much for liking the video so far. I appreciate it. Also, you can also join our mailing list by going to revolutionaryblackout.substack.com. This gives you email notifications whenever we go live. So you guys have that there. Thank you very much to everybody who, is constantly subscribing to our Substack so you can get those email notifications. And so we appreciate them very much. And also, if you guys would like to reach us with any type of stories, words of encouragement, you guys can email us at revolutionaryblackout@outlook.com. You guys can get in touch with us there. So thank you so very much for that. Now, as customary, as I always like to do, I want to go to the chat and say hello to some of the peeps, because really this channel is people powered. So let's go to the people. So let's go to them here, starting out with Matt says, out of the hospital. Yes. 17 days, over 2.5 weeks in the hospital. It was bad infection, bad infection. But I'm on my way. I'm on antibiotics right now, so I'm making sure to do a little bit better in that arena. By the way, if you are, and this, I'm not a doctor and I do not give out medical advice. I'm just giving out an idea. If you are on antibiotics and if you consult with your doctor first, talk to them about getting on some probiotics while you are on antibiotics as well. It could even be eating food that has probiotics in it, right? Like Greek yogurt or something like that. Because the thing is that antibiotics typically, unless it's a specific focus type of antibiotic, if it's a broad spectrum, it may kill some of the good bacteria that lives inside your gut, which is part of your immune system. So go ahead and talk to your doctor or talk to your dietitian if you have one, and talk to them about adding probiotics while you're also on antibiotics as well, because you know that gut biome that needs to stay balanced and healthy too, because it's not pretty if you start to get rid of the good bacteria. And there's good bacteria that actually helps your body and your body. So just wanted to put that out there. So we have Carty Mark says, RIP to the newly named Gulf of America. Your biodiversity will be missed. Child, let me tell you. I'm going to tell you right now. When it comes to the renaming of things, it's child's play. It's just child's play. It's a slap in the face, especially to different indigenous groups. Like Mexico existed before America did. And then like Mount Denali existed before it was named Mount McKinley. So therefore, I like to respect the people, the original people of the land, and actually call it what they want to call it. And so therefore, that's what I'm gonna call it. So all this trying to reclaim shit is really just a cultural form of imperialism and colonialism in order to make the world seem like it belongs to us when it doesn't belong to us. In fact, I'm actually going to take the idea of the Native Americans, which I absolutely love. We don't own the world owns us, means that we don't own the land owns us. So therefore, we need to just be good stewards of the land instead of trying to make ourselves into its God or its maker. It just rubs me the wrong way, right? This is one of the things I can't stand about Trump. His blustering over dumb little itty bitty things, when in reality, what is changing the Gulf or a mountain name going to do for the price of eggs? How is it going to decrease the amount of homelessness that we have in this country? Is changing the name going to give us Black Americans reparations? Is changing the name going to end all the wars and all the destabilization that's going down in South America, which is causing mass migration? Is it going to actually change our atmosphere so that we don't start having climate refugees flooding because now their ecosystems are being torn apart? What does renaming actually do? The GOP is just as performative as the Democrats. The only thing is that they perform for more conservative audiences. The performance is on both sides. This is why we're post-duopoly. Because the thing is like you got to see the performance before you, right? Last week, I didn't mean to go on a tangent, but damn it, I'm back. Last week, during Donald Trump's joint address to Congress, there were performances on two sides. There was the Republican performance and there was the Democrat performance, and none of them were doing shit for either me or you. They weren't really doing anything. They were just telling you what you'd like to hear. They just want to tickle your ears and say, see, I'm going to cut the taxes, and then I might just send you guys a stymie. This is the problem when you're subjected to a team sports type of duopoly that makes you go, oh, well, I'm on this team and I'm on that team, and then we just got to fight it out. When in reality, they don't have monopoly on ideology, and things go into many different directions. So therefore, if ideas can go in many different directions, then why don't we have a multi-party system? Because it's rigged. Anyway, Miguel H, good to see you, says peace. Bad Wolf coming in saying, welcome back, my friend. Thank you very much. CDC voter says, hey, JB, good to see you. Adi Shah says, JB, good to see you well. Love and healing vibes from Uruguay, your way. Oh, you guys are so sweet. I love our local and international audience. Thank you so very much. Mouse coming in saying, hey, pals. Marcella says, Amera effed we are. Yeah, we're cooked. Let's just be real. Well, depending on how we organize, they may be cooked, but I digress. Spike says, glad to see you're back home. Thank you so very much as well. Wesley O'Neill says, good afternoon from Atlanta, Georgia. Oh, hey, northern neighbor. Nice to have you. Yeah, I'm in Orlando, Florida, so but nice to have you. Thank you so much for joining. We have Natalie Williams says, JB, good to see you too. Nick, my brother from another mother, RBN founder says, glad you're back, my brother. Thank you so much, bro. It's so good to be back. Man, what the hell did I put in that tea? I am wired. Okay, let's continue. Okay, good. Natalie says she actually got a notification. Janice, who is also a RBN channel member, says, hi, all. Good to see you. Thank you very much for the super chat. Krista says, great to see you back. Thank you so much, Miss Krista. And it is wonderful to be back. And I've been listening. I haven't kept up as much when I was in the hospital because I was focused on healing. But I've been listening exactly to what has been said, some of the things that have been going on, some of the things that the Trump administration has been doing, the response from the Democratic Party, what has been going on internationally, what has been going on domestically, which is one of the segments I'll be covering today. And so, I've been trying to keep myself up, and the text messages from from Sappy and Nick have been keeping me up to date. So yeah, that's been very helpful too. Let me see. Jasmine coming in saying, happy you're feeling better. Thank you so much. Bad Wolf says, acceptable idea. Thank you very, very much. Sisyphean says, hey, JB, glad you're home, feeling better. Did I say hello to you, Chuck? Good to see you, Chuck. Chuck is in the chat too. Natalie says, take your pre, pro, and postbiotics after you're done with those antibiotics too. Glad you're home and feeling better. Thank you so very much. Thank you for taking care of me, and not just in body, but in spirit too. Solar Punk says, my mom's been going through a similar thing, had C. diff for weeks, but because antibiotics kill all the good bacteria. Oh, yeah. Try to focus on getting some of those probiotics in your gut biome. Talk to your doctor. But like if she and they're actually in a lot of natural foods, so you don't actually have to go and get it at like a drugstore or anything like that. You can just go buy certain foods and it'll actually, encourage the good bacteria. And thank you so very much for all the super chats. It's good to see all of you in here. I am way beyond the start time. We'll just do a couple more. Savvy says, Pulse, the probiotic is in between the doses of the antibiotic. Do not take them together. Black Ronin says, welcome back. JB, thank you so very much. On the Rumble side, Bob says, you mad, bro? Nah, I'm actually quite happy to be back, actually. Terry Connolly says, greetings, James and comrades. Bob says there's no such thing as a free lunch. Yeah, you know what? Nothing is free, but it also matters where we collectively send our money so that it benefits either all or some or a very small few. And we're sick and tired of a very small few dictating how exactly our money is spent. So therefore, we're going to take control back, and we're going to actually dictate how our money is spent collectively as a people. And we're going to expand democracy, not just to our governments, but also to our workplaces too. Because that's what we are. Those of us who are socialists and communists, we are purveyors of democracy, because democracy shouldn't just be in your government. Democracy should also be in one of the places you spend the most time in your life, at your job. So yes, this is how we're going to do it. And so the thing is that no, there's no such thing as a free lunch, but it can be collectively put together, we pool our resources as a people, and then each according to his ability, each according to his need. And so therefore, if you can't really do much for yourself, then yeah, you're going to get a free lunch. Why? Because we need you to get better enough so that you can get to a point where you can actually start contributing, right? And even then, your human value is not limited to how much you produce. Your human value is inherent. So therefore, you deserve free food because the earth gives of it. All we got to do is just till it. And if we can do it all together, then many hands make the load light, right? You deserve housing. You deserve healthcare. Education should be free for all. I'm sorry, but welcome to RBN, where we actually talk about the human condition and want to actually improve the human condition instead of wanting to gatekeep and paywall vital necessities like healthcare, housing, education, and environment. Come on now. Where have you been? Where have you been? If you've been watching this channel, if you've been watching anything like me, Savvy, Nick, or Rome, you should know this by now. Radical Education says, Jay. Thank you so very much for that. Woo! I am okay. All right, let's go. So one of the things I want to talk about, it's not a segment. Yelling doesn't make property rights go away, but here's the thing. Yelling doesn't make property rights go away, but organizing does. Organizing actually makes it go away. Organizing takes private property and puts it in the hands of the public so we can actually democratically choose how we do it. So yeah, you can focus on my passion and how I'm very passionate right now about it. Part of it's because of the caffeine right now. But at the same time, don't just listen to the tone of my voice, but listen to the actual information that's coming out of my mouth, and you might learn something. But this is the point, right? Because the thing is that having private property has done what for this country? Guess what? My ancestors used to be private property. What has it done for this country? What has it done? Homelessness went up, 17% last year, and then another 15% the year before? So this is my point. Well, you're talking to one right now, and if you don't like it, then you can just go away yourself. Anyway, let me continue on. Anyway, Sisyphean says you can have personal property. By the way, just to preempt that BS. Yes, there's a difference between personal property and private property. Anyway, somebody needs to really have a conversation and talk about really what the human condition really is need. Talk about that Maslow's hierarchy of needs and all that different stuff. But anyways, one of the things that I want to talk about before I get into my segment, and I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible, because I wasn't planning on talking about this, but I was on Twitter. Don't join if you don't have to. But a lot of people are talking about how Bernie Sanders right now is trying to drum up support to go against the oligarchs within the country. My question is first, where was Bernie doing this the anti-oligarch tour between 2021 and now? How many billionaires contributed to Biden? How many billionaires contributed to Pelosi and Jeffries and Schumer? And now you want to talk about oligarchs? It's funny. It's funny to me that, and some people are going, well, there's nothing wrong with him trying to rally people together, to push for change. And I'm like, that rally should have been done, number one, during the Democratic primaries, which was non-existent in 2020. I'm sorry, non-existent in 2023, 2024. Because you had people that were literally trying to primary Joe Biden because they felt like he wasn't doing a good enough job. You had Marianne Williamson, you had Dean Phillips, you had Cenk Uygur. What was another one? Was it another one? There might have been another one, but I can't remember right now. But out of those people, they said Democratic primary is canceled. So therefore, the Democratic Party shut out democracy in favor of reelecting their covert fascists. See, there's two types of fascism that a lot of people don't really think about. There's covert fascism and there's overt fascism. I'm going to give you an example like this. Let's say hypothetically we're at work, right? And at work, you see a woman come in. She has a cut on her lip. She has a bruise under her eye. She may be limping a little bit. She may be kind of a nervous tick. And you go, what happened? Oh, I had a bad fall. Or, oh, I bumped into something, or something with my kids or whatever, right? But then you may recognize it as, is your partner beating you? And then she'll deny and go, well, he just, he didn't mean it. And so, when it comes to things like, sorry, when it comes to things like that, you see the signs, but it's more covert because you actually have to notice the signs in order to see that domestic violence is taking place, within that life of that woman, right? And you see it in the trauma responses that she has. That's the covert. The overt is when her husband comes around and beats her right in front of you. The problem is that the Democratic Party has known that fascism has been in play for a long time. But at the same time, they're not willing to fight against it. And now some of them are outraged that the partner is being beat in front of us, which is the overt fascism. Both parties were willing to greenlight genocide. Both parties are willing to carry out war as long as it benefits them. Both parties are willing to serve the interests of the billionaires. There's covert fascism, which is what the Democratic Party takes the fascism, sweeps it on the rug, and said, there's nothing really to see here. And then there's the overt fascism, which is you see from the GOP. But then the Democratic Party goes, like Deadpool. I can't believe it. Even though you've known it's been there. And now you have Democrats dancing on screen instead of actually fighting against the people who they say are fascists. By the way, at last week's joint address to Congress, when Representative Al Green got up and then they censured him because of the decorum, when it comes to fighting fascism, decorum goes out the window. There is no decorum. There should be no quarter given to fascists at all. No mercy when it comes to challenging them, when it comes to standing up against them. And yet, what did most of the Democrats do? They stood there, put paddles up, or they wore pink shirts and said, we're resisting. And so the thing is that what Bernie's doing, it's vile in my opinion, because he's like a father that left to go get some milk and never came back for about a good 6-7 years. And then he comes back to the little kids and they're like, Daddy. When we know what he went and did. But some people just don't want to accept the fact that he's trying to sheep herd you back into a party that actually endorses covert fascism. This is the issue with people like Bernie Sanders. He's not trying to create a whole different party. He's not saying, oh, we need to leave capitalism alone Because remember, he's a democratic socialist, which means that he wants capitalism to still exist within just guardrails. That's like saying, well, I don't want a full cup of poison. I just want a couple drops with my water. So this is the issue that I have with someone like a Bernie Sanders. And so I just wanted to put that out there because a lot of people are about to be fooled yet again. Once again, they're going to be bamboozled, run amok. And that's why people like us and people like you who know the truth exist. To pull them from the abyss and say, look. This is not what you think it is. This is the good cop trying to get you back into graces with the bad cop. Leave it alone. The game is rigged. And people will say, well, JB, what's your answer? What have we been saying this entire time? Doing mutual aid, building dual power, organize our communities. Because no amount of not me, us is going to actually change the system unless we actually do something fundamental outside of the electoral system. Now, if you want to talk about third parties, they're good for being able to disseminate information about what we could have. But that's the goal. That's the crux of what is good about third parties, right? And even if they can't win, they can still provide that challenge and go, hey, you could do something much more than this. And that provides fuel for people to go, you know what? We're going to do this on our own outside of the electoral system. And we're actually going to give people healthcare, housing, education, and so on and so forth. But that's the issue, is that they were never truly interested in actually providing a real alternative, a real foil to fascism. And so I say, be careful and look at past actions, especially when a Democrat was in office. And then beyond that, start looking to your community more than highly paid politicians that when push comes to shove, they really won't push back. Look at Bernie Sanders. He would even call it a genocide after a while. And then on top of that, he kept on saying the BS that Israel has a right to defend itself. Man of integrity? All right. Anyways, I just wanted to do that. But now, what are we going to talk about today? Let's get into our segments. I only have 2 segments, but I think it should be worth noting that these are going to be very important, especially both nationally and locally here in Florida. Okay. So we're going to go into more of this in our drinking water. We're going to be talking about what the Supreme Court has okayed. And this is something that should give everybody pause, period. But first, we're going to be talking about Florida. We're going to be talking about Florida DOGE. So you can see the mirroring between Ron DeSantis and Elon Musk. So we're going to talk about that. So as far as DOGE, right? The Department of Government Efficiency. Let's be real. Has it really made our government more efficient? Now, people will say, well, they're cutting out different taxes by cutting out the jobs that they think that they don't need. Donald Trump is so idiotic that he thought that there was a study to make mice transgender, when in reality, it was actually a study to make mice transgenetic, meaning it changes certain parts of their genome within certain body parts to imitate the same function as human, like a human, like instead of a mouse kidney acting like a mouse kidney, it'll act like a human kidney. Instead of a mouse stomach acting like a mouse stomach, it'll act like a human stomach, and so on and so forth. So then when they do the testing, it'll actually show, okay, so this is what the effect will be on humans, because we want to do this with the trials of rats first before we ever go to human trial, right? But as we all know, Donald Trump is not a reader. And so therefore, he said they were trying to make mice transgender, which is the biggest load of BS I've ever heard in my life. The thing is that they're not focused really on efficiency for your benefit. The focus of efficiency is for the billionaire's benefit. That's what it's about. I want to focus on something that Dr. Richard Wolff has said, and then we'll talk about what Ron DeSantis is trying to do. So there's this video that came out on Breakthrough News that I want to share, and it's basically DOGE debunked by Dr. Richard Wolff. We'll watch a few minutes, and then I'll react, and then we can move on to the actual article. But I just want to get into this first. So, shout out to Breakthrough News, doing amazing work on the ground. Let's start.
What you're watching with Trump and Elon is pure ideology. And for all the talk about how Trump and Elon Musk, are breaking the mold and breaking the rules and taking the Republican Party in a new direction, the truth is the Republican Party has always hated taxes. That's how they built the Republican Party. It's a coalition between the business community, which doesn't want to pay taxes, and a whole lot of special constituencies which are brought together in the Republican Party with a deal. We'll give you the special thing you're interested in if you make sure to keep the taxes on business low. So the Republicans pander to white supremacists, and the Republicans pander to gun enthusiasts, and the Republicans pander to the anti-abortion fact. These are their constituencies who come together in the Republican Party, and the deal is you support anti-taxes, and we will help you with the guns and the fundamentalist Christianity and all the rest of it. Okay, we all know that. Okay, what Trump and Musk are doing is cutting taxes. How are they doing it? By laying off millions of public employees who, if you don't have to pay them, well, then you don't have to raise the taxes. They're all worried sick about one thing. No one should make a mistake. When Mr. Trump was president the first time, the one major economic act of his first presidency was the tax cuts of December 2017. One of the greatest tax cuts in American history, focused mainly on cutting corporate taxes and taxes of the rich. That act included that all of this would come to an end. Remember, it was back in 2017, in 2025, this year. So Mr. Trump's real agenda, he hasn't discussed it much because he's got to kind of manage it. His real agenda is to extend those tax cuts.
Now, one thing I do want to add to this is that who also allowed a lot of the tax cuts to continue? Was it not Joseph Robinette Biden? Covert fascism, overt fascism. This is the point, is that when it comes to both parties, one will rack up the balls and the other one take the shot. Who's racking up the balls? The Democrats, right? They're racking it up, making sure it's all nice and even, right? Set up for the Republicans. And then they take the square, they take the triangle away. Then Republicans, boom. Balls go into the sockets. Because it was never actually about opposition. It's what you call controlled opposition in order to keep you pacified, to make you think that one party is fighting for you and the other party is fighting against you. And guess what? The Republicans also do this, against other groups that even their constituencies of too. But just not as much because, well, corporations favor the right more than they ever do even the center. So we got to keep that in mind. Let's continue.
To rewrite that bill to make it last another 8, 10, 12, however many years he can get. The problem is our government is already spending way more money than it raises in taxes, partly because of that tax cut in 2017. Mm-hmm. So he's got the problem, how can I extend the tax cut and then face the American people with trillions of dollars in government debt, which I promised to deal with? Answer. Tell a very conventional Republican story. I'm getting rid of unnecessary government fat. You used the word before. I love that. It's like losing weight. Who could object, right? We're on a diet. So we're on a diet. We're getting rid of the fat. That was never true. That was just pure ideological nonsense. They don't care about all those needs going unmet. They are glued to the idea if we lay off millions and millions of workers, whether they work for Social Security or AID or the Labor Department, or it doesn't matter. All of that money that we would have to raise in taxes to pay for them, we don't have to anymore. And we'll go to the American people and say, look, who cares about all those public employees who lost their jobs? Mm-hmm. I am able to say to you, we will not raise your taxes. Look at me, aren't I wonderful?
And this is the point. But the thing is that when we talk about not raising the taxes, the thing is that he wants to not raise taxes on what he calls job creators. I call them surplus value thieves, because they actually steal the surplus value from the actual workers who actually create the wealth. But he wants to make the taxes lower on them. He wants to make the taxes lower on the shareholders so that they don't get taxed on their dividend checks, so they don't have to pay property tax and capital gains and all that. The problem is, a lot of times, when you cut taxes like this, by firing people, you create a vacuum, because now you're going to have a lot of unemployed people, and a lot of unemployed people need what? Services. And what are some of those services? Well, some of these services are government services. So this can put a strain on state governments, local municipalities, as well as the federal government when it comes to the agencies that will still be in place. Because then HUD is going to be working on overtime now. You're going to have a lot of people are going to need SNAP benefits now. You're going to see a lot of people that are going to start defaulting on their student loans now, because you cut their jobs. I think the unemployment rate somewhere is around 3.5% right now. And so now this is also a way to create I think it's Marx that calls it the reserve army of labor. But Professor Wolf actually gets deeper into that. But there's a lot of issues regarding this. Let's continue.
You know, if you have the money of Mr. Musk to repeat that message from every bus stop, from every TV show, from every advertising venue, you might get away with it because people don't put two and two together. Here is the reality. Every president has been trying to do a mild version. We don't have lots of fat in our federal system. That's why our taxes are lower than they are in most capitalist countries. We don't have a birth to death health system that would employ huge numbers of people. We don't have it. We don't have a massive program to help people. And so we don't have high taxes. And every president has had the incentive. You'll be able to keep taxes down by not doing a lot for people. Mm-hmm. So we don't have fat. When we cut public employees, we cut services.
Okay, so basically, in layman's terms, the government is actually working with a skeleton crew. And the government has been working with the skeleton crew for a long time. I want any and every single one of you to find somebody at the VA and ask them at the VA how long the VA has been on a hiring freeze. Oh, it's been going on even when Biden was in office. The government has actually been on a skeleton crew this entire time, and now Trump is removing the bones. Will it be able to hold up still now? Because if you got a skeleton crew, but you start removing bones, well, crash. So I just wanted to say, let me go back just a couple of seconds because I really want to hear Professor Wolf hit this home again.
We don't have fat. When we cut public employees, we cut services. Mm-hmm. Any fool would understand that.
Okay, hang on. So, what about things like FDIC insurance, right? The Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. What about the office? What about government offices, like our consulates? What about our state parks? What about when it comes to you go into the Social Security office? Let's say you need a brand new Social Security card. Those lines are going to be long as hell because they're not going to have as many people working in those booths. When it comes time for you to work at, or when it comes time for you to use any of these federal government services, like for instance, if you're trying to get your tax return back, well, your tax return may take a little bit longer to get back to you. So the thing is that in the effort to trim the fat and the effort to be more efficient, now they are going to make things even worse for the average worker and average American. Because if you cut those services, then guess what? You're not going to be able to use them as adequately. Some of us are in fear right now because some of us get things like disability benefits. Some elderly people get Social Security retirement, or some people get SSI, supplemental security income. And so then if they start to make cuts to that division of the government, then that can also cause delays in benefits, which means mama and daddy, grandma and grandpa are going to be asking you for money for rent because their check hasn't come in yet. It may be running late. And then the landlord's not going to say, oh, well, they're running late. Well, we'll just hold off. No, no, no. And they're not going to accept partial payment. They're going to start the eviction process. So do you see? Do you see? And by the way, when I talked about the whole trans rat thing that he was talking about, that Trump mistakenly said, which was actually transgenetic, this is also taking away money from actual research and development and innovation from our public schools and colleges and universities that actually innovate, whether it be medically or in information technology, so then we can actually improve our lives. And if you take away that public money, then the innovation stops, because capitalist corporations do not innovate, because then that's money based on a risk that they could lose out on, and they don't want to lose out on that risk. So they let the public institutions do the research and development, and then what they'll do is they'll take the patents, or they'll take the technology, patent it, and then make it private, and then they'll sell it at a premium back to you. So now, if you notice, your iPhone is probably going to look a little more similar than it has been in the last few years. Each year, you're going to have the same shiny new iPhone. You're going to have an iPhone 16, and then you're going to have an iPhone 17. It's going to be like the 16. And then the iPhone 18 is going to be like the 16. And then iPhone 19 is going to be like the 16. And iPhone 20 that looks like the 16. Because the innovation that we actually have in this country was actually done by public money. ARPANET, which was originally developed by the military, which was the early internet, public money. Google was actually created with public money. The actual web address for Google used to be google.stanford.edu. All the things like we have on our phones, touch screens, cameras, our fingerprints to be able to unlock, facial recognition, all this other stuff. This stuff was developed by public dollars. Medically, a lot of this stuff was developed by public dollars. And so do you really think that capitalists, the shareholders, are going to say, oh, we're going to risk and do more R&D ourselves? Hell no. They're just going to keep recycling the same bullshit and selling it back to you. So when it comes to actual development, that's where it happens. Like, going into space was not valuable to any company for a while until it started being profitable. And then now you got people like Elon Musk sending rockets into the sky because now it can be profitable. But when it wasn't profitable, it was put through public dollars into NASA. So this is one of the things that a lot of people don't think about when it comes to research and development, especially for those of us with chronic or debilitating diseases that we would like to see more cures for.
If you take half the people in a government office and you fire them, you think the other half are just going to do twice as much as they used to when you don't pay them more? Ain't going to happen. No private employer does that. The public can't either. You're laying off all these people. They are now in terrible shape. Where do you think the millions of people laid off by the government, where do you think they're going to go? They're going to go to the only place where there are jobs left, the private sector. And you know what they're going to do there? They're going to be desperate for work. So they're going to accept private sector jobs at lower pay than you, the currently privately employed person, would accept. So what they're doing, which the business community understands, firing millions of public drives down the wages of private employees, which the employer class cheers on. This is a twofer. You get less in your taxes because You've laid off the public workers, and you drive down the wages of private employees for the private employer, too. That's why they voted for Mr. Trump. That's what they want from Mr. Trump. And that's what they're getting from Mr. Trump. That's all this is. The rest, if you pardon my Spanish, is bull. And you know what part of the bull I'm referring to. It's meant to cover it over, to make it look as though it doesn't matter. You're just getting rid of the superfluous fat in your budget, as if this is not going to impact. I know, just from one example, across the university space, I've been a professor all my life at American universities. I'm hearing from all of them that their budgets are being cut, that they don't know what money from the federal government, if any, they're going to get. They've been relying on that money for most of what they do for at least the last 50 years.
So think about MIT, Caltech, Virginia Tech. Think about all these universities that are doing medical and technological innovation, things like that can actually make our lives better. And it's stopping. So that's the efficiency, right? I'm not going to play the whole thing because this is, he goes into more detail, which is great. But one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to share the link to that video so you guys can finish and watch the rest. But that was through Breakthrough News, debunking really, the nature of DOGE. Now, here's the article that I wanted to share with you guys. So, of course, the bastard son of Trump, Ron DeSantis, actually wants to create a DOGE for Florida. So this is going to be a state version. So it says Florida Governor DeSantis to create a DOGE task force. State universities will be audited. So let's go. Let me see if I can. Okay, perfect. It says, I like to say we were DOGE before DOGE was cool. Republican Governor Ron DeSantis praised the chainsaw-wielding DOGE master, Elon Musk, who is head of the Department of Government Efficiency under President Trump. Musk has already directed layoffs of thousands of IRS, Social Security, and other federal workers. And now DeSantis wants something similar in Florida. He says, I think this is really good. I think taxpayers need to have a seat at the table in Washington. And for too long, nobody has cared about the taxpayers and the generation that is ultimately going to have to pay for this mismanagement that we have seen over these many years. That's what DeSantis said. It says, despite a 2022 report from the Florida Department of Management Services that shows that Florida has just 96 state workers for every 10,000 people, the lowest in the nation, DeSantis Monday promised he and lawmakers would chop some more. It all begins with the regular session starting next week and the effort to further trim government launches with the establishment of a DOGE task force. The governor added to continue to streamline our government and to continue to eliminate necessary bureaucracy and to continue to ensure tax dollars are used in the most efficient way possible. The task force will oversee the cutting of 740 positions in state government, ending 70 state boards that the governor considers irrelevant, and began to utilize artificial intelligence to review vendor contracts. Says the governor also wants to review local, city, and county budgets, the audits of every college and university, so FSU, UCF, Florida A&M, all of those, especially for classes and programs deemed unnecessary. Here's the crazy part. A lot of times when you try to deem something that is for the betterment of humanity as unnecessary, then there's going to be, what's the word I want to use? There's going to be a deficit. And human performance when it comes to us being the best of who we are. Like, for instance, everybody wants to focus on STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, right? Which is fine. But in pursuing that, you start to cut out the arts. And the thing is that the arts actually help to be able to bolster a mind that focuses on STEM. Because quiet as it's kept, studies have been shown that people who play musical instruments and focus on artistic pursuits, it also creates synapses in the brain, and people are able to have and carry out more understanding. So therefore, it actually bolsters it. See, this is the problem. It's just like people who go, oh, we just need to be logical, or no, we need to be emotional. No, you need both, because both work in tandem with each other in order to make a well-balanced human being. It's the same thing when it comes to STEM and the arts. You need both. And one is not better than the other, and one is not lesser than the other. The thing is that you need both. But the problem is that what they do is they go, well, we just need to trim out all the fat. And the thing is, like, there is no fat. And by the way, have you ever met a human that has no fat? Why? Because they're dead. So they need some, right? Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, let's continue. So here's from Anna Escamani, says, here's another example of Governor Ron DeSantis grandstanding and using his platform to appeal to a political agenda. She reminds us that the Republicans have been running the Capitol since the late 90s. And she adds that if they now think that government is too big, they made it that way. She added, the problems are the fact that we have a broken unemployment system, that we don't have regulation of insurance companies and their predatory, fraudulent behavior. So there's a lot of areas where we can cut costs. Unfortunately, a lot of it is created by Governor Ron DeSantis. I want to focus right here on the insurance companies, because a lot of insurance companies, especially homeowners insurance companies in Florida, are actually leaving Floridians. So a lot of Floridians are actually losing their homeowners insurance, primarily because we have so many natural disasters happening, right? The smart thing to do would be either one, say, well, if you're not going to insure, if you're going to start dropping people because of the natural disasters, well, I guess that you shouldn't operate in this state, period. And also, I am willing to accept that we have a single payer homeowners insurance in this country. I think we already have, well, it's not a single payer, but there is a state funded insurance program, homeowners insurance. True story. And the crazy part is you could just make it single payer. So then everybody is insured so that they don't have to worry about co-pays, premiums, and deductibles when it comes to actually for their homes. Couple that with a state or municipal public banks would actually grow the tax money in the markets, so then they can use the funds from that. So in order to be able to do more infrastructure projects to bolster the state even further, instead of actually raising taxes, well, you actually create a public bank that actually uses the markets itself in order to self-sustain the state even further, kind of like the way North Dakota does. But are they going to do that? No, because the focus really isn't on keeping working Floridians self-sustained. The focus is more on giving more money to the richest Floridians. And there's a lot of them in places like West Palm Beach and Miami. And here in Orlando, we have them near Windermere and Isleworth, places like that. You have some of the richest Floridians that are living in some of these cities. And they are, and even Ron DeSantis is now considering eliminating property tax. Meaning that if you're a homeowner, you don't pay taxes on your home, even at the point of purchase. who is that going to affect? Who is that tax burden going to go on to? But nobody ever wants to talk about it. Because the tax burden actually has to go somewhere. And I have a few questions that I'm going to propose after this article, but let's finish it up. Says the governor's DOGE task force will sunset next year as he prepares to leave his second and final term in office. I think that's it. Yeah. So here's my question that I would have for a Governor Ron DeSantis if he was in front of me right now. So when it comes to DeSantis' DOGE, one of my questions is, how will this affect state Medicaid and SNAP benefits? Because if you're trimming out the fat, and we already have long lines at the Department of Children and Families where people who are waiting for Medicaid, SNAP benefits, and cash assistance, how will these lines work? When it comes time for us to renew or review our eligibility for state Medicaid or SNAP benefits, are they going to be able to get back to us in time so then we don't end up starving or not having health care? How does this affect the speed and efficiency of departments like the Florida Department of Children and Families, which deals with Medicaid, CHIP, SNAP benefits, and cash assistance? Is he really going to cut the fat there? How will this affect programs like LIHEAP, which is the Low Income Housing Energy Assistance Program for people who are struggling with their utility bills? People's utility bills are going higher because we're experiencing more extremes in our weather. That's what climate change is all about. Colder winters and hotter summers. So therefore, you got to run that AC like crazy in Florida. So people can't afford to cool their homes or heat their homes in Florida. Are you still going to keep LIHEAP available? And then is it going to be enough to help enough people who are struggling? How will this affect the municipal housing authorities that handle programs like Section 8 and rental assistance programs? There are people out here who are on Section 8 and housing assistance. Jacksonville has a housing authority, Orlando has a housing authority, Tampa has a housing authority, Miami has a housing authority. How will this affect them, especially when you're also focusing on state funding for when it comes to these municipalities? How will this, and let me ask you this, will this include cuts to state law enforcement, like the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the FDLE? Are we going to see less state troopers on the road? Now, I'm a defund the police, a police abolitionist kind of guy. So that's the one thing I say, well, let's not be too hasty here. If he wants to cut that, well, But just like Donald Trump said he wouldn't cut the military spending. Oh, I'll show you about that in a minute. How much more time will be needed at the DMV and other state offices when it comes time to renew your tags, when it comes time to renew your license, or you got somebody that's trying to get a driver's license, how long that's going to take, how long will the lines be? All right. Will this slow the response and resources for natural disaster relief, which is needed on a more frequent basis? So, of course, we had a couple of hurricanes that affected Florida last year, and many people have lost their homes. And so how is this going to affect the natural disaster response when it comes to this? These are some of the things that we have to ask, because if it's already going at a slow crawl, if you cut more, guess what? When it comes to government services, you're screwed. When it comes to state unemployment services, when you need to claim your weeks because you need that check to be able to pay for your vital necessities, is that process going to go as smoothly as it should? This is the issues with DOGE as a principle, because it's in favor of cutting services. By saying it'll cut taxes, it'll cut the services for the people that need it the most, which means it's a war on workers. All because the richest Floridians don't want to actually pay taxes on the money that they've gotten through surplus value. All because the landlords want to keep more of their money. More of the money that they actually didn't earn. You want to talk about really didn't earn it, DEI? Let's look at the people who are the beneficiaries of dividend checks and landlords. That's the real DEI that needs to die. But we never talk about that because they're always complaining about we never have enough money, even though they're sitting nice and pretty from where we stand as workers. And so couple that with the cutting of federal government services, that's going to create an influx. That's going to create more stress on, say, the unemployment system. That's going to create more stress and influx on, workers in the private sector having to compete with workers that were formerly in the public sector. So this is one of the issues that a lot of people aren't really focused on. And remember when I said that Donald Trump literally said that he literally just said that he's not going to cut any defense spending, even though that is one of the biggest chunks that is taken out of our government, period. Let's go into this. It was never actually about real efficiency. It's only about screwing over the working class for the benefit of the rich. So here's Maria Bartiromo from Fox News talking to Trump.
You said you wanted to do the Golden Dome. You've got a lot of ideas for America. But then earlier you said you wanted to cut $1 trillion in defense spending, right?
I didn't say I was.
You did not. So I was like, which is it? Are you cutting defense spending or are you building us up?
I never said defense spending.
Okay, because I think you were talking about denuclearization,
Correct.
and that's where the cutting of the spending came in.
I never said cut. No, it's not in these days. I'd love to cut defense spending, but not now, because you have China, you have Russia, you have a lot.
Hang on. You have China, you have Russia. He said that's one of his reasons why he doesn't want to cut defense spending. Okay, why not just keep the military bases around them and then close all the rest of the military bases then? Isn't that more efficient? Why we need military bases still in Germany? Why we still need military bases in South America? Right? Why are we sending all this money to Ukraine? And it mostly goes towards General Dynamics, Raytheon, Northrop Grumman, and Lockheed Martin. Why are we doing that? Why are we putting all that money into them? Why is the Senate, I'm sorry, not the Senate, but the House approving of defense spending that gives more money to the Defense Department than even what they ask for? Why are we throwing money at them? We spend more money on our defense than the next 10 countries combined. How many military bases does Russia and China have outside of their own countries? Are they that big and bad that we gotta have like 800 military bases around the world? That's the equivalent of Vegeta key blasting and thinking that's going to work. If anybody has watched Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball Super within the last 20, 25 years knows that key blasts like that don't work. Which means you're cooked. Sorry, nerd reference. But that's the thing when it comes to defense spending, is that he won't cut defense spending, even though that's the biggest chunk. The Pentagon literally cannot account for over $20 trillion. And you mean to tell me that you're focused on cutting things from the Department of Interior? You're focused on cutting research and development for colleges? Meanwhile, we're giving billions upon billions and even trillions of dollars to defense contractors. For what? To oversee oil fields that don't belong to us? To oversee opium fields that don't belong to us? Is that what we're doing? Is that real government efficiency, Donnie? Let's continue.
A lot of problems out there. No.
In fact,
No, what I have said is we spend a lot of money on nuclear missiles, nuclear weapons. The level of destruction is beyond anything you can even imagine. It's just bad that everybody has to spend all this money on something that if it's used, it's probably the end of the world.
You said you wanted to do the Golden Dome. You've got a lot of ideas for America. But then earlier you said you wanted to cut $1 trillion in defense spending, right?
I didn't say I was.
You're not going to. So I was like, which is it? Are you cutting defense spending or are you building us up?
I never said defense spending.
Okay, because I think you were talking about denuclearization.
Correct.
And that's where the cutting of the spending came in.
I never said cut. No, it's not in these days.
Okay, so he also talks about they wanted to cut nuclear. So Maria Bartiromo, being a journalist, should know that if he said that he wants to cut the nuclear program, our nuclear stockpile is not overseen by the Department of Defense. It's overseen by the Department of Energy. Here's the thing. So therefore, he actually spoke the truth. He's like, I'm not trying to cut the Department of Defense. Now, I think that the nuclear arsenal should be under the Department of Defense, but it's actually under the Department of Energy. It says, established by Congress in 2000, the NNSA is a semi-autonomous agency within the U.S. Department of Energy that protects our nation by designing and delivering a safe, secure, reliable, and effective U.S. nuclear stockpile, forging solutions that enable global security and stability through non-proliferation. So that was a bait and switch, because when you think nuclear arsenal, defense, when in reality it's actually overseen by our Department of Energy. How many of y'all knew that? So therefore, when it comes to the defense spending, that doesn't go to nuclear. That goes to the 2,000-pound bombs. It goes to our F-35s. It goes to our submarines. It goes to our aircraft carriers. It goes to many different things that we pay for through these big, bloated, greedy defense corporations that are constantly wanting us to be at war with somebody so that they can make more money. And Donald Trump does not want to cut that because he's afraid of Russia and China. Scaredy cat, coward. Because why is he afraid of China? Oh, because they're doing better economically. What are they doing? Well, how are they threatening us militarily? How? Oh, so I have to increase my stockpile of guns because my neighbor somehow is making more money than me? What? Does that make sense to you? Oh, well, he's making a lot more money, so I'm going to have to stockpile my guns. What actual military and global threat is China to us? Now, you can talk about the Ukraine war. The Ukraine war is a war really of attrition that the United States is a proxy war of attrition that the United States is trying to wage. But really, they pushed them into that direction. because the United States really just wants to have a puppet within the Russian government so that they can extract their resources. And this is why they're constantly trying to push NATO eastward. This is why they're trying to put NATO basically at the front door of Russia, just like where they put missiles in Turkey back during the Cuban Missile Crisis, because, well, we see Russia, we see that big ass landmass that they have, and we want those resources. So we got to get Putin out of there so we can put our own puppet in there so that we can extract some of those resources. Right? Because they also have state-funded things like state-funded oil and, you know, natural gas and things like that. And they don't, and the United States doesn't like it when it's in state hands, when it's in public hands. They like it when it's in private hands so that they can actually extract more resources and give more money to the top. That's why the United States wants to do it. And the United States actually, I think they promised, I think it was Gorbachev, I think they said that they would not move 1 inch eastward from Germany and the expansion of NATO. And then look at what they did. So then you had a mad dog that was, you know, within, you know, his cage, and then you kept poking at the mad dog, and now the mad dog bites, and now you're like, oh my God, he's so mean. But you were the one that was throwing the sticks in there. You were the ones that throwing the rocks and balls in there, and you were the one that opened the cage, and you provoked him into having to do what he did in Ukraine. On top of all that, the ethnically speaking Russians in Ukraine was actually begging Putin to come in and intervene, and Putin was trying to be as level-headed as he could at that point in time. But the United States wanted to get their grubby little hands on Ukraine because Ukraine also has resources. So this is why they did a coup in 2014. And then they allowed the Nazis in Ukraine to run roughshod within the government. So much so that you got a comedian for a president. And after every single time they attempted to actually achieve peace, the West goes, no, we don't want peace, even though that's not for you to decide. That's between those two countries to decide. Boris Johnson, what the hell are you doing? Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. I'm starting to sound like Nick when he goes off on a tangent, which is actually quite nice, you know, when it comes to foreign policy. But the point is that we do not need, number one, we don't really need these nuclear deterrents because we're the ones with the sticks. And now we're trying to tell everybody to put down their sticks while we still keep ours in our hand. Stupid. And you wonder why the DPRK has a nuke now? Deterrent. But on top of that, it's like the government efficiency that people like Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump that are trying to implement into the government really aren't for the benefit of the people. And that's really my conclusion, is that it's for the benefit of the people who are the richest at the top, and who's going to end up suffering is going to be the rest of us. Guaranteed within, I give it 9 to 12 months, a lot of Trump supporters are actually going to turn on him. I say about a good 25 to 30% of Trump supporters are actually going to turn on him because they're going to realize that he screwed them, that he bamboozled them, that he ran them amok. He hoodwinked them. Just like Biden did to a lot of people. And so there's really no government efficiency. It's really just a ploy to make the rich richer. And make no mistake, we're going to see a larger wealth transfer that are just going to go up. And even Professor Richard Wolff is predicting that we're about to hit another recession because the last recession that we hit was in 2020. And a recession happens every 4 to 7 years. We are on time. So be prepared. People are going to be suffering even more. And this is why we talk about organizing and gathering our communities together so that the harm is mitigated or is lessened so that we can actually build something better than what the Democrats and Republicans can ever think of. We can do it. We just need the will and the chutzpah to do it. All right, everybody. So give a like to this video. Thank you so very much for that. I'm gonna be honest with you, is just it's sick. And by the way, just one thing I want to say about the cutting of workforces. Here, let me just share this really quick as well, because I think it's really important, because this is a Black channel. And I want to share this. It says Black people represent roughly 18% of the federal workforce, a figure higher than their representation in the general U.S. population, around 13.2. So it says federal government employs a large workforce, with Black employees constituting a significant portion. While Black Americans make up 13.2% of the U.S. population, they hold 18% of federal government jobs. Black representation within the federal government is uneven across different aspects, with some areas showing higher representation than others. Black employees represent 11.66% of civil service leaders. And so the thing is like, that's a lot of Black jobs that are actually being cut. And this is something that I want to talk about with, I want to have a conversation, go even deeper into that with Sabby on the next Sabby and Jaybe show, because a lot of times Trump talked about things like Black jobs, but I guess that went out the window when he decided to follow his Lord and Master, Elon Musk, into developing DOGE. And so where does that leave Black people, and particularly a lot of us Black Americans? It leaves us nowhere, or it leaves us less than where we were before. I see a lot of defaults in mortgages about to happen. It's about to happen. Anyway, let's go to the comments in the chat. Yeah, Zoya, thank you so very much for this. It says imperialists need bases to control their colonies. Absolutely. And this is one of the reasons why they really want every country to be a vassal state, right? They want China to be a vassal state, right? They want Russia to be a vassal state. They want Cuba to be a vassal state. They want DPRK to be a vassal state. But a lot of these countries, they resist it. And so therefore, we got to we got to destroy a mosquito with a nuclear warhead, because we can't have people who actually have autonomous sovereignty and freedom and self-determination. It's crazy. Sean Miller says, sissy, they're paid not to. Carlos Pena says Trump is a part of the club and we ain't in it. Absolutely. Vicky says the CFPB, this Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, actually protected consumers. Yes. In fact, there was a testimony from Nick here on RBN that actually talked about how I think they owed him money from being overcharged. Especially, they did a lot of overcharging towards Black people when it comes to auto loans. And I think he got like a check for $1,000 from the CFPB because they overcharged him. But when you start cutting government services, things like this go out the window. So guess what? Then people who get cheated, they stay cheated. There's no recompense, right? Also, if we're going to talk about the government efficiency, this also takes away the incentive for anybody within the government to push for actual true reparations for American freedmen, because there's no way they're going to want to give any money or any type of resources to the Black people in this country when they're trying to make the government more efficient, because then that means that most of the money is going to go to just people, working class Black Americans like you and me, who may be watching, and they can't stand to have that happen, because then that means that we'll have more purchasing power. That means that our material conditions will get better. That means that the money will not go to the corporations directly. So this is also why when I look at Black Americans who are for reparations, but they actually voted for somebody like Donald Trump, I say you just shot yourself in the foot. Because Donald Trump would never stand for something like that. Just like Joe Biden, Donald Trump is racist. Yes, I said it. I don't care. Cry to your mama about it. And the thing is, like, I don't care how many rappers he took pictures with, and I don't care how many music videos he showed up in. Just because he has proximity to Black people doesn't mean he actually is for Black people. A lot of slaveholders had proximity to Black women, and then they end up having mulatto babies. But does that mean they actually liked Black women? Let's be real. Let's keep it a buck, right? Because a lot of times people will just, well, he likes us because he freed Kodak Black. He did the First Step Act. Well, yeah, I mean, he may throw us a couple bones or two, just like the Democrats do, but that doesn't mean he actually is doing it for us. He just wants you to bubble in, next to his name in that Scantron every 4 years. But now he's a lame duck president. So really, is he really going to have any incentive to help you now? Hell no. It's crazy, man. Jacqueline says, JB, I haven't heard you mention a few times that nuclear isn't part of the military budget, but part of the Department of Energy. So why did that interviewer mention denuclearization as part of defense? Because she didn't do her research. She is a Fox News host, and she should have known that. And yet I'm not a professional host on the network, and I knew that. This is why independent media matter. I'm not yelling at you, Jacqueline. But I'm just saying, my outrage is like, Maria Bartiromo, you should have known this information before you even sat down with Donald Trump. And yet you're saying, oh, well, denuclearization is the part of the Defense Department. No, it's the Department of Energy. And a quick Google search will tell you that. But they repeat the same talking points because they just read teleprompters. That's all they are. They're stenographers for the government. They're stenographers for the empire. This is who they are. That's why Maria Bartiromo is able to sit in front of Trump, because she's a stenographer for the empire. It's the same thing with a David Muir. It's the same thing with Jake Tapper. It's the same thing with a Rachel Maddow. They're all the same. They're all stenographers for the empire. People talk about, oh my God, state media. We have state media. It's called Fox News, MSNBC, New York Times, Axios. It's called One America News Network, Newsmax, Breitbart, all these different companies. And then some of them cosplay that they're independent and they have this kind of independent feel. And yet they're still behaving and giving the same talking points as the State Department. Or they're still running roughshod for either the Democrats or Republicans instead of actually advocating for working class Americans. And some of those consider themselves to be on the left. And so this is one of the issues. This is why true independent media needs to be supported. And let's say Maria Bartiromo was to leave Fox News. Well, you know what the first place she would go is? YouTube. And she'd be saying the same talking points over and over and over again. That's why she got the job at Fox, because she actually believes those talking points. It's part of manufacturing consent. Noam Chomsky was right about that. But yes, Jacqueline is crazy, man. Yes, Zoya says the money the Pentagon can't account for is enough money to pay all credit card debt in the U.S. multiple times over. Also, the money that the Pentagon can't account for is enough to pay the reparations to every single Black American freedman within this country. Or the amount of money that the Pentagon lost is enough to give pretty much everybody health care, at least for a couple of years. We had a pandemic, right? All that money. And where did it go? It's just crazy, man. Promethean Flame says journalists will sometimes say or create arguments to mislead people. I would have also made the assumption without the clarification about the Department of Energy. Yeah. Just trying to make sure I get to people who I haven't talked to yet. Talkish says China or Russia have never detained and beat me up. China or Russia never massacred, enslaved, or relocated by force I guess you mean my people, but America has to my family and people. Yeah. And this is the same argument that the Omali Yeshitela of the Uhuru 3 actually made in saying that they never actually did all this stuff to us. It was all America that did this stuff to us. People are like, why, James, why are you a communist? Well, because America screwed me over that bad. And it made me realize how bad capitalism really is, because I live in the belly of the beast. Let me see. I'm just trying to see if I can. Banjon Throposine says, bloody hell, a Doge just for Florida. What's next? A Doge for Texas? A Doge for Louisiana? Maybe even a Doge for maybe a Doge for Michigan or Illinois? Yeah. Anyway, so let me. Oh, Chuck, you gave a super chat? I did not see that. I'm sorry. Let me. Hang on. Did I start? Oh, nope, not yet. I already had it started. Thank you so much for reminding me. Chuck says all humans deserve basic home for free, like the fire department. If you can't afford it, and free food and free clothing and free healthcare and education and free toothbrush and free toilet paper, because we got to get that to criminals in prison. I mean, you're not wrong, definitely. And the thing is like, it's really just about sharing our resources collectively so that everybody has their basic needs met. If we're not willing to have a society that shares our resources to have our basic needs met, then we're not really a society. But here's the thing, no person is an island. You actually need other people in order to be able to survive on this planet. Humans are a very communal species, so therefore it behooves us to behave as such as a communal species, because even the more communal we are, the more we actually thrive. If we run away from community, which is part of the root word of communism, then we start to actually deteriorate, which is why we're in the state that we're in right now, because we are being antithetical to our nature, which is communal. And so this is why it is beneficial for us to start to build community. It will actually help you even physically and emotionally. It may not be drastic, it may be small, but it's a start. Thank you very much for that, Chuck. Todd says, if they fired every federal worker, that would save a little over 5% of our bloated budget. How have those cheering it on been tricked into hating their own class so much? It is truly sad to watch. This is, yes, Todd is absolutely correct. And what Todd is basically saying is that we're actually hating the workers that actually make our federal government run. Because we're saying, well, we shouldn't be paying them because their jobs are unnecessary. Well, how unnecessary it is when you can't get your Social Security check in time, or how necessary is it when a natural disaster happens and FEMA ain't giving you, diddly squat? How effective is it when, you're going to the VA because you're a veteran, and then the services are even worse than what they are right now because of more government cuts? How efficient is that? Is that actually efficiency, or is that really a class war on the workers? Todd is absolutely correct. Thank you very much for that. And this also brings me into saying that thank you so much. Thanks, Topher. Says it's great to see you back, Jaybe. Thank you. This brings me to want to say that we are doing our best to try to organize so that we don't have to bear the brunt of the abuse from our government officials in our lives. We should not have to endure this any longer. But this only comes with us informing as well as organizing. But because of you, we are able to inform, organize, and encourage as well. So shout out to the patrons on Patreon. For without you guys, we would not be able to have this channel. One of the reasons why we speak so much about being post-duopoly, as well as telling you the dirty deeds of the system, is so that you realize that this system cannot be reformed. It needs to be demolished, and a new system needs to be rebuilt in its place. That new system needs to be something that's worker-centric, that is democratic-centric, that's democracy-centric, where democracy is in the workplace, where we have central planning model that actually focuses on everyone, especially the marginalized within our communities. And this is why we talk about what we need to talk about on this channel. We talk about this and we couple it also with Black issues because, well, by identity, we are Black people. And we are typically the canaries in the coal mines. And so we're giving this warning out to people to let them know that, hey, if they're going to do it to us, then that means they're going to do it to you. And in doing so, we're warning you and letting you know that whatever type of bigotry that you may have against any type of marginalized group, you need to throw that out the window. You need to come together with us, build solidarity, and let's fight together to actually have something better. And this is one of the reasons why RBN exists. Part of it is because there was no actual lane that was set out. There were a couple of bright spots in the early days. You had people like Nico House, Jamarl Thomas. You had people like Tim Black who were talking about these things from a Black perspective. But we said, let's blow the lid off this thing. And that's what we're doing. This is why independent media is so important. And you guys have made this possible. So I just want to give a huge shout out and thank you to all of you who have helped us to continue this so far. So let's go into our final segment because I really want to get into this because this is something that I think is egregious. And really, this reminds me of the Star Wars, right? Star Wars Revenge of the Sith. So let's get into it. So more of this in our drinking water. Remember in Star Wars Revenge of the Sith where Mace Windu was going after Darth Sidious and Anakin Skywalker said, no, he must stand trial. And then Mace Windu says he has control of the Senate and the courts. He's too dangerous to be, I can't say the words because I don't want to get us in trouble. But the meaning is that what we have here is a system of government that is being held hostage by corporations. And because they want less regulation, they're willing to thin the herd of human beings, to thin the herd of human capital stock in order to be able to achieve greater profits. And they have our courts by the throat. I want to get into this because I think this is absolutely important and we should be talking about this because really, to be honest with you, if this does not scare you, this shouldn't scare you. It should concern you. It should give you a harder resolve to build community and get out of this system. This is an article out of Truth Out. It says Supreme Court weakens EPA ability to limit discharge of raw sewage into water. So before I get into this article, remember what I was talking about earlier about DOGE? Well, that's also going to weaken the EPA. And the EPA is a government agency that regulates environmental protections so that we don't end up suffering at the hands of corporations or people. So because they want to do things that may be harmful to us in order for them to earn a few extra bucks. Now, the EPA is flawed? Absolutely, right? Because guess what? When you keep cutting and cutting and cutting, it also makes things work less efficient because it's not a well-oiled machine. It's called death by 1,000 cuts. So let's get into this article here. It says San Francisco's case against the EPA's sewage regulations was supported by conservative and mining groups. Let's get into it. It says conservatives on the Supreme Court ruled on Tuesday to weaken limits on the dumping of raw sewage into bodies of water in a blow to the government's ability to enforce the Clean Water Act. In a 5-4 decision, the court ruled that the Environmental Protection Agency exceeded its authority on requiring San Francisco to limit the discharge of raw sewage into the Pacific Ocean under CWA, a bedrock of environmental law credited with bringing American bodies of water back from staggering pollution prior to its passage in 1972. Let's go over this, just one little paragraph right here. Again, in a 5-4 decision, they ruled that the EPA exceeded its authority in requiring San Francisco to limit the discharge of raw sewage into the Pacific Ocean. It exceeded its authority in stopping raw sewage from getting into our water. How many of us swim in the beaches, right? How much of this can get into our drinking water supply? And yet they said they exceeded their authority? I get when some people say that regulation, government regulation and red tape can be a little too much and it can slow things down. I get that. But there is no, I don't see like, regulation has to be deemed necessary, to keep us safe and to keep things fair. Right? Having less regulation opens us up to things that are unfair and unsafe. Like, for instance, the safety regulations that were created just to manufacture the light bulbs that are in your home instead of them blowing up in your face when you try to take them out of the sockets. Or the safety regulations for every single time you get inside your car, the safety regulations that's deemed every single time you jump on public transportation. These safety regulations are in place so then they don't cut as many corners, so then you don't end up dying unnecessarily because they want to save a few extra dollars. And so I would think that keeping raw sewage out of our water would be deemed some of the highest priority within our nation, but apparently not to 5 members of the Supreme Court, which means that EPA protections have been weakened. Let's continue. The city has argued that the limits set by the EPA were too vague and that it wasn't possible for officials to determine the limits had been crossed. The Biden administration argued last year that the generic standards were necessary in order to lay the groundwork for more specific regulations and that the rules were already made clear to officials. Writing for the majority, Justice Samuel Alito wrote that the EPA does not have the authority to make cities and other polluters comply with what he called end result permits, or permits that follow a certain amount of pollution discharge with limits, but rather than the EPA itself should be responsible for maintaining the standards. Here's the problem, is that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So here's the thing, if you're not going to allow the EPA to say, hey, you can only do so much, right? Oh, that little drop, that's all you can do. And it's like, well, how big does the drop have to be? Blah, 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 blah. They want to go hammering over that. But the thing is that the ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Because then if a whole bunch of people get sick, then you're going to be trying to investigate and, provide for people after the fact that they have been sick, and some of them have already died, so you can't resurrect them. And yet you're saying that the EPA is overstepping their authority? Especially when, Jackson, Mississippi, still struggling with drinking water. There's many different spots within the United States, especially in Black neighborhoods and Black cities that are struggling with clean drinking water. Let's not just talk about them. Let's also talk about the rural communities, a lot of the white communities where you have people that are struggling with drinking water, things like that. Has anybody checked on East Palestine, Ohio lately? How are they doing? Especially when you start to weaken protections when it comes to the environment, and then what happens there? Oh, but you guys want to fix it after the damage is done. Okay. I said he argued that the EPA is armed with ample tools to enforce such standards at a time when Donald Trump and Elon Musk are slashing the EPA's operations, and after the Supreme Court dramatically weakened federal agencies' ability to interpret and enforce laws. San Francisco's case was supported by numerous groups like the National Mining Association and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which have long challenged pollution standards in the U.S. Some San Francisco lawmakers have urged the city to drop the case, warning it could have broad ramifications. So, of course, you have the National Mining Association. Well, the National Mining Association is they're saying, well, if you place too many regulations on us, then that's going to limit how much we can mine. And then they'll make the argument, well, see, because it's actually going to be bad for miner jobs. So, they need to work in these mines. So, if you limit us, then you're going to be limiting them. But here's the problem, is that it is an unhealthy way for us to get energy. Now, I'm of the opinion that we should do a just transition and go into more renewable resources of energy. And anybody that's working within the fossil fuel industry, you either do one of a few things. If they're close to retirement, then go ahead and let them retire with full benefits. Or if they're still, in the midst of working, then you can send them to school to either go into the new renewable energy industry or to go into a different industry. Or at the same time, you can give them a nice big severance package and say, look, we're not doing this type of energy anymore because it is really bad for our environment. Because even though it helps us to move things, it is not healthy for us as people. But you do a just transition so that there's no gaps and there's no loss of jobs or loss of employment or loss of education, where they have to try to figure things out on their own. Give them all grants to go to school so that they can work at these other jobs that are in more renewable resources. But the problem is that, these regulations have to be in place in order to protect us so that we don't end up getting sick. Do you guys actually really want to drink raw sewage? Because I sure as hell don't. It says environmental groups had expressed disappointment in the leadership of San Francisco for bringing the case to the Supreme Court at a time when conservative supermajority has been taking any opportunity it can to weaken federal regulations. Now, Justice Amy Coney Barrett wrote a dissent for her and the court's three liberals, saying that the majority's decision is puzzling and that its conclusions are wrong as a matter of ordinary English. She said that the decision, in contrast to what the majority claims, takes a tool away from the EPA, a move that could make it harder to enforce pollution standards. And if it's harder to enforce pollution standards, then guess what? More people are going to be affected negatively by more pollution. Because corporations do not want to they don't want to pay for safety standards. They want to cut those corners because they want to get those dividend checks to their shareholders to be a little bit bigger every single year. This is the problem with capitalism. It requires infinite growth on the planet with finite resources. Let's continue. It says during Donald Trump's first term, his administration made it easier for cities to dump raw sewage, including waste like human feces and urine, into waterways as part of his widespread rollbacks of environmental rules and attacks on laws like the Clean Water Act. The Biden administration rolled back many of Trump's attacks on environmental regulations, including rules putting waterways at risk. Biden's protections were met with pushback from Republicans. But here's the thing with the Democrats. They'll talk a good game and they'll say, well, yeah, I'm doing this good thing, but this is no different than somebody being, now I am obese, so I can say this, but this is like somebody being extremely obese, going to eat a whole bunch of fast food, and then they're like, well, just give me a Diet Coke. Bruh, does that make any sense? The Native Americans would like a word with you, Joe Biden, because the Willow project that you approved for drilling is also going to be harming our waterways. So yeah, what that he did was good there, but then he approved the Willow project and he approved fracking. So therefore, what real good is he doing? He's canceling out the positive by doing more negative, which means more negative results can happen. And so this is the problem with both parties, is that they'll say, oh, we did these environmental protections, while on the same side of on a different side of their mouth, they're saying yes to some of these harmful practices which are polluting our communities, particularly urban communities, which especially a lot of Black and brown people, and then rural communities, which consist of a lot of poor whites. And so therefore, who ends up suffering the most? The working class, the working masses, or the proletariat, as we like to say. because we can't afford to get the Evian waters. We can't afford to always get the Zephyr Hills. We can't afford always to get the smart water. Sometimes we just got to get the smart water straight from the tap. But that water is supposed to have a standard of cleanliness that is safe for human consumption. And meanwhile, it's not. So that's pretty much the story. And this just reflects to me the thought that a lot of these waterways that could be affected with dumping of raw sewage are going to be heavily affecting those of us who are poor and working poor communities, especially poor Black communities, poor white communities, poor Latino communities, poor Native American communities. And the Native Americans have been out in full force to protect the water. Thank you so much for your sacrifice and your devotion to making sure that this land continues to be clean and habitable. Thank you. The problem is that this government is willing to give more power to the corporations so that they can make more money in, the first, second, third, and fourth quarter at the expense of people like you and me. Remember millennials, Gen X. Remember when we used to play outside? What did we do when we were thirsty? We went to that garden hose, didn't we? And we straight from the garden hose. We never went back in the house. Number one, because we want to get mama's cool air out. And plus, Black parents, they're like, you're either in the house or you're out the house. Stop coming through my door. Stop slamming my screen. But we drunk from those hoses outside while playing with the confidence of knowing that our government is providing us with clean water out of the faucets that are coming out of our house. Now imagine if it has fecal matter in it. Poop, doo-doo. What if that has it in it? Then what? How many infections will we start seeing within different people, especially of different groups who are more at risk? People who are immunocompromised like myself, or children, right? Or elderly people. Can you imagine taking a shower, realizing that there could be fecal matter in that water that you're putting on your body? Can you imagine the amount of more fecal matter that could be on your clothes after you put them in the wash? You're going to wash them dishes with that water? This is why regulations of these things are important, because capitalist companies, if they could choose to have no regulation, they would. And in whoever dies. That's just the cost of doing business. And that is not fair. That is not just. That is not right. This is why regulations exist. And for the Supreme Court to weaken this shows that our government is ran by corporations. Our courts are ran by corporations. And any means to try to change it from within, like some people are trying to do with like Bernie Sanders, are really just a fool's errand. So this is why it's important that, we start to fight so then we could have, so that we can make it so that if workers own and operate the system, then therefore we're going to make sure everybody's good, because we don't want to risk anybody. Because then when you start to take risks on the lives of other people, that really cheapens the life of not just other people, but your own life too. And when we talk about environmental protections, this is some of the stuff we're talking about. It's not because we want to cut people's pay and jobs, but if we're going to do things like provide energy and resources to people, and utilities to people, well, we should be doing it in a way that actually benefits not just us, but also the planet that we live on. Because if I'm living in a log cabin, I'm not going to keep chipping off pieces of my log cabin to burn to keep me warm. Because if I keep doing it after a while, then I'm not going to have a log cabin to house me at all. My house is going to be burnt down because I used a fire to keep myself warm. You have to come up with a different way. And there are other ways that we can do it. And the problem is that the corporations don't want to do it because they care more about their dividend checks, and they care more about having their lifestyles up here way above other people on these ivory towers looking down on us. It is time to change the culture of this system for it to be imitation of different socialist countries. One of them being the People's Republic of China. One of their principles that I absolutely adore is called collective prosperity. If we can't collectively help everybody to prosper, then we will not do it. Because then that only singles out small segments of people who are, or who have all the privilege. And then next thing you know, you have these people so powerful that they can wield and manipulate governments with a donation. So this is why the entire system needs to be changed. It's systemic. It's in the courts. It's in the executive branch. It's in the legislative. So that's what the Supreme Court has done. This is why we talk about organizing to circumvent that power, so that we can create something that's more worker-centric, that is more healthy for us, so we can actually be good stewards of the planet instead of being selfish and try to make over on other people. So, did you guys like the stream? Go ahead and give a like. Thank you so very much. It's good to stretch these muscles and get back to doing this type of content, especially when it comes to tying the system and what the governments do to how it affects us as workers. And always ask this question: who benefits? Who benefits largely from what the government does? And by the way, I'm not saying that government is the problem. Government's a tool like a hammer. It could be used to build, it could be used to destroy. But the thing is who is wielding that hammer? Now we have to wrestle that hammer away from the people that are destroying our home. But we have to organize to do it. All right, so let's go to the chat. I forgot to check for Rock Rumble rants, so I will check there. Okay, looks like we don't have any Rumble rants. We're good there. So thank you so very much for that. Let's go to the Rockfin chat. because I know I missed that for the first segment. I'm sorry for missing that during the first segment. I'm still getting my bearings straight, y'all. Okay, let's scroll up. Hepcar says, to address the gap, we propose to develop an animal model of feminizing hormone therapy to study the effects of estrogen, anti-testosterone therapy on HIV, vaccine-induced immune responses. That's from the NIH. He says, so Samuel L. Jackson held MLK Sr. What in the world? What are you talking about? Says this is the BS we had to put up with. Democrats have no excuse. Jabari Bridgeport says the New York Health Act would guarantee free healthcare to every New Yorker at the point of service. No copays, no premiums, no deductibles. Has 34 co-sponsors in the Senate, where it needs 32 votes to pass. Has 78 co-sponsors in the Assembly, where it needs 76 to pass. And here's the thing. You know, what Jabari Bridgeport is bringing up, Roger, in regards to the Democrats, is they literally can get it done, but they're going to sit on their hands till it's too late and go, well, we tried, and they have the plausible deniability. And then when a Republican gets in power, then, oh, we're trying, when you actually had it in the bag right then and there, and they don't want to do it. That's the problem with the two-party system, is that they will always feign that they're trying, but they actually won't try. Oh, yeah, man. Next time somebody pulls up on us, I'm going to fight with you. I got you. But then when that fight starts, they're like this, right? But they're not throwing no blows. They're not throwing no elbows. They're not throwing no knees. And then as you're walking away from the fight, when you're all beat up, you're walking away, not a blemish on them. And you're wondering, how did they manage to be in that fight without getting a blemish? And we still lost? See, I'm okay with fighting. Even if you lose, if you got the bumps and the bruises and the gashes and you're limping, showing me that you gave it your all, I'm still going to clap for you. The problem is that the Democrats act like they're going to defend. They act like they're going to fight. But the problem is that they don't, because they don't care. Because there's a good cop, bad cop situation. The good cop works with the bad cop in order to be able to lie to you into getting a confession out of you. The good cop will treat you good to make it seem like, oh, well, you know, we're with you. We just want to help you out. We just want to solve the case. When in reality, they just want to get you because they need somebody to lock up. It's rigged against you. And the crazy part is that the fact that they actually have the votes to pass and they have all the co-sponsors that could just vote for it and pass the New York Health Act. And then once, if they were to get single payer healthcare in New York, that could bleed over into other states. Guaranteed, if New York does it, guess who's going to be the next one? Probably Massachusetts. Then after Massachusetts, you may get smaller states like Delaware, New Hampshire, maybe New Jersey. Then you start to get the bigger states like Illinois or Colorado, to the point where California is going to be like the outlier. And then California is going to have to do it. Because you gave the working class a taste of what it's like to actually have your material needs met. Once you give a taste to the workers of having their material needs met on a fundamental level, they will never forget the taste, and they will hunger for it incessantly. This is why they do not want us to have these things, because then we'll want to take it further. We want to expand services that the government should be providing for us. But then this would also take away from the people, the big corporations too. It's just a game that they play with us. They play in our face every single time. And I'm glad you caught that, Roger. I'll just read what Roger says. It says, this is what it's been for years. We have been through enough co-sponsors to pass the New York Health Act years ago up until this very day. I guarantee you that if we had a Republican governor, they would pass it so that the Republican governor can veto it so that they can say, oh my God, look how altruistic we are that we passed single payer health care, but the big bad Republican governor vetoed it. You got to get it to the big bad Republican governor out of office so that we can get a Democrat governor. But when we had a Democrat governor for decades, you still didn't pass it. But District Council 37 and the teachers union, who are a very big lobbying force in Albany, get kickbacks from the health insurance companies to get their members to buy into their health insurance policy. When I discovered this is when I started to move away from unions, because I realized that unions are for unions and they are not for working class people. If you want to be for working class people and for workers, I suggest you get serious about worker cooperatives. Who needs a union who is fighting for the right to stay on the corner when with the worker cooperatives, the workers can own the block? This is exactly why the number one thing us New Yorkers should be pushing for is for them to put a legislative initiative amendment on the ballot asking us, the voters, if we would like to ratify the New York Health Act into the New York State Constitution. This does not require the governor to get involved. We, the New Yorkers, approve it, ratify it through the legislative initiative process. Better yet, let the legislative initiative amendment on the ballot asking, would we like to have the ability to place our own amendments on the ballot for voter ratification instead of having to wait around for them to police their own on the ballot so we can ratify their amendments. Absolutely. I will retweet this. But that's also, I didn't mean to do that. But that's also one of the reasons why we got to focus on more worker-owned apparatuses. Hemcar said, I knew MLK's mother was shot and killed, but I didn't know MLK had a brother, A.D. King, that also died mysteriously in a pool a year after MLK's assassination. His brother's wife wrote in her book that some of their kids had passed away too. How many dead Kennedys and dead Kings are there? Thank you very much for the tip on Rockin' Hemcar. That is really interesting. And you know, sometimes there may be people who are part of the same family that are just as radical as the other parts of the family, and they probably said, "Well, we got to snuff that out before it starts to get too big." But I don't put it past them to do things like that. Roger says the FDIC is only required for banks that cross state lines, institutions that offer banking services that don't cross state lines. Credit unions, local community banks don't need FDIC. Public banks can insure them. Hemcar says, I think he did give mice hormones for transgenetic purposes, though. Wasn't antizine feminizing frogs for real? I have no idea. But I do know, here's the thing, when it comes to frogs and many other different aquatic species or amphibious species, they also require a specific temperature of water to have a particular gender. So sometimes, you know, it's like maybe it increases body temperature or something like that. That may end up changing things like that. But I mean, you know, there's, you know, transitions between gender, well, really not gender, but transitions between sex for the most part in many different animal species naturally in nature anyway. So I don't want to get too deep into that, though. Roger says, okay, Jaybe, can we get some of that government money to invest in co-ops? I agree. Says, I was thinking the history of compact computers and how they were able to keep costs down by lowering labor costs. Here's another way to keep prices down. Flatten the profits of shareholders to evenly distribute the profits to the workers by transitioning into a worker cooperative. I agree with that too. Hemcar says, Chomsky would say we need to incentivize the green sector like we incentivize the tech industry, but rich want more tech and cut out electricity output. Roger Meadow says, shows what DeSantis knows. Check your DM. He's late to the party. Also start pushing our Zoomers and Alpha generations to study abroad for free. Yes, state and municipal public banks, but also remember each state has economic regions. I don't know if I have time to really read it, Roger, because I'm actually way later than what I wanted to be, and I have a meeting that I have to get to in 15 minutes. I'll just see how, if this is hang on. Why am I talking? Oh, I see. Okay. It says college enrollment has been declining since 2010, and the trend is expected to continue. The decline is due to a number of factors, including cost, the job market, and a shrinking birth rate. Factors contributing to the decline: the cost of college is a major barrier to enrollment, especially for adults who are already working. Job market: some students are choosing to work instead of going to college. And in birth rate is the number of children born in the U.S. has been declining, which means that fewer students will be entering college age in the future. So says enrollment trends. Between 2010 and 2021, enrollment declined by 15%, according to the National Center for Economic Statistics. In 2024, enrollment among new high school graduates declined 7.1% since 2018. In 46 states, 18-year-old freshmen declined, with the average decline being 7.1% year over year. The implications are the decline in enrollment could lead to fewer college graduates, which could impact future job growth opportunities and income growth. Well, of course, yeah. I mean, one of the biggest blocks of people, of generations within this country is millennials. And we are now declining in that sphere as well. Let me see. Florida has 9 keys: southeast, southwest, central, east, central, west, northeast, northwest, north central. You can have a regional public bank as well. Okay, so due to the sake of time, I'm going to have to rush through. If there's no tips, because I have to go. Let me do this one more thing for Hempcar and Roger. Hempcar says, didn't DOGE cut a lot of woke color revolution stuff with USAID? Well, USAID was really a CIA cutout. So, I mean, I'm not really against that. But the thing is, funding for actual beneficial programs, if they are legitimately beneficial, not for the sake of us using soft power in order to take over other countries, but to legitimately actually help, I would be for that. But the thing is that we don't need apparatus like USAID, especially as a CIA cutout. I said Putin didn't poison our water, food, and air and give us unaffordable housing and medical care. I agree with that. Roger Meadow says the thing is, Jay, is that the Supreme Court of the United States EPA decision was a federal government versus local government, not government versus shareholders. Regardless, though, I always say that what is done at the federal level can be done at the state level. Question is, what is CalEPRA doing about it? Check DM for Californians. Oh my God, you definitely had a black mother. You're either in the house or you put out the house. Stop slamming my damn screen. My mom didn't curse, but I had aunts. Oh my goodness. Yes, I got the tip about MLK's brother. Yeah, I just read that a few minutes ago. Okay, so let's go into the comments in the chat. All right. Janice says dysentery is on the rise. It is spread by raw sewage. Absolutely. If we're going to start having dysentery on the rise, then can we legitimately say now that the United States is really just a third world country with a Gucci belt on now? Can we say it now? Are we going to start having more malaria here now? We're not, are we going to start getting things back like that? Like, my gosh, it's just crazy. Talkish says water is life. Absolutely. Water your plants, water yourselves, people. Kima Madhu says pray for the people of Syria. Unfortunately, the Syrians are going through a lot right now. It's a sad situation all around. So check once more for Rumble Rants. All right, looks like we're pretty good on there. And let me go to the rest of the chat just to finish out. Let me see. So it says fish full of contraceptive pills and antidepressants and cocaine after sewage pills. Good times. UK sewage spills treatment works. Oh my gosh. Ugh. Yikes. Anisha says in Uruguay, we had water issues months ago. Government used salty water to provide homes. It was ish. People got sick. Appliances like water heaters for showers broke down. No one paid for damages. Yeah, it's pretty sad. Vicky Adams says our septic systems are heavily regulated because of the shellfish population. Yeah, because I'm gonna be honest with you. If you're trying to eat some oysters, but that oyster has been sitting in some water that got some fecal matter in it, or if you like them clams and you try to make some clam chowder, but that clam chowder comes with a side of ish. Y'all really think this government is actually trying to help us? This is why we got to leave both parties, y'all. Because they're gonna kill us in order to make a buck. This is exactly how it happens. Sister Fian says, I don't trust the tap water already. Me neither. That's the problem. And you know why so many people don't trust the tap water? Because we can taste it. We can look at it and see, like, what in the hell is floating in that? And this also comes with a lot of government cuts too, right? This is why so many of us drink bottled water now. But this is also a boom for, the Nestle's and the Dannons and the Evian waters, so that they can sell us more water that we actually should be getting for free, because water is actually freely occurring over our heads periodically on this planet. It is crazy, y'all. It is crazy. Anywho, so I'm going to have to get going. I'm sorry, y'all. I wish I could actually read more chats, but I got to get going. But thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in. Look, actually, I want to read this one more. Roger says waste management is part of infrastructure, something a public bank is made for. Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you for all the well wishes. Thank you for all the love. Thank you for supporting me. I wasn't able to make it because I was in the hospital. I wasn't able to make it to the Seattle event for Workers Strike Back. So I'm actively in talks with Spot Fund to how to get the money back into there so they can refund the money to all the people who donated, because you guys, were trying to help me get there and I couldn't get there. So therefore you guys need to get your money back. So I'm currently working on that. And also this Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, standing as we know, I'm just going to message to confirm, But Jordan Sheridan will actually be joining me. We're going to be talking about his book, especially about the Flint water crisis. I want to talk to him more about what's going on in East Palestine, Ohio. And I want to talk to him, also bring up this issue with the EPA, as well as the issue with a lot of the DOGE things that the Trump government is actually doing. So we're going to have an interesting conversation there. And I'm trying to bring on more people who I may not agree 100% with, but we can find different points of agreement. And then we can also have dialogue and consensus and see where we meet at the middle. So if you guys would like to see that, Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be having on Jordan Sheridan. So thank you very much from Status Quo. Anyway, thank you so very much to everybody for tuning in. I'm going to share this video as my exit because we got to laugh. And in spirit of DOGE, right, where, Elon Musk is trying to make things more efficient, but he's actually screwing us over. There's a black mama that is mad. And let me tell you something. If you know anything about black mamas, if you know anything, when she yells, do not speak, because number one, that's talking back. Number two, hold your ass, because something make, I'm just saying. Anyway, water your plants, water yourselves, leave the world better than you found it. Smoke them if you got them, drink them if you got them. If you ain't got them, then watch something funny, because joy is revolutionary. I love you guys for watching. Mwah. Forehead kisses. And you know what? I'll see you guys in the next one. Let me find this so y'all can laugh on the way out, because it's hilarious. All right, let's go.
President Musk, if my doggone check don't be in my account next month, you're going to need more than Homeland Security. In fact, going on 5 now, you don't need Homeland Security. You're going to need Jesus. It's 5 things you're going to need. JESUS. And all the angels. Let my check be a day late or a dollar short. I don't want to hear it. You better hire everybody back you fired, get them people back to working to get my check in my account next month. I don't want to hear it. I do not want to hear it. And everybody who's supposed to get a check, they better get it. And it better not be late. Because if you think they scaled the walls of Washington on January 6th, you're going to see me scaling the walls. Right? That letter don't be there in April. Let my check don't be there. I'll be scaling the walls. You need to deport yourself. And don't go back to South Africa. Because that ain't safe for you right now. That ain't safe for you. You better find somewhere on Mars or somewhere to go. Let them checks be late. And they better not be late now another month. I don't want to hear no talk about the SSS, the SSI check. I don't want to hear no talk about it. You put everything back the way it's supposed to be and get your tail from up there in Washington and take wig with you. I mean that with all my heart. You better call on Jesus.